Hello and welcome to Revive Stories. It's so good to see you again. We've had a small break, but exciting to be back with another story. And we've got Candice joining us today, who is an amazing member of our church on our worship team, an incredible lady. She's going to share a bit of her story. And if you're new here, you're new to Revive Stories or new to Revive TV, YouTube channel, really all that we're trying to do here is have great conversation. And we want to share stories of how God has come into our lives, changed our lives. We believe in the power of the testimony. We know that if God can do it for us, he can most definitely do it for you in whatever season you find yourself in. So Candice, thank you so much for joining us. You have squeezed us in your lunch break. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Phil. I'm very excited to be able to share my testimony with everyone, and hopefully it can touch some lives.
Yeah, incredible, man. Thank you so much. And what we like to do, Candice, when we start, we just like to chat a bit about childhood, the early days, kind of where you grew up, and then maybe after that we can chat a bit about the early experiences, maybe with church or with God. So go ahead.
I am one of three siblings. I have an older brother and a sister. Um, I am the baby in the house. I think there's about like a 9-year gap and a 12-year gap. Last night I messaged my siblings and I was like, "How old are you guys?" And both of them were like, "Old." I'm the baby. We grew up in Atlanta, so it was my mom, my dad, and myself, my sister, and my brother. And we didn't grow up like in wealthy circumstances, but I can say that God met like all of our needs.
Awesome.
I'm very privileged to be able, or that I had both my mom, still have both my mom and my dad in my life. Like my mom, she stopped working when I went to school, so she was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked, I feel like forever, but my family, like we grew up in church. My dad was not saved. My mom was. I think I started going to church with my mom from age 2, if I remember. She reminds me of that all the time. That's my first exposure to church.
Yeah.
So
What was some of those, sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. What were some of those early memories like of church for you as like a young? Was it cool? Was it boring? Obviously, going to church when you're really young. What was that like?
Church was like at that time I didn't know Jesus, I didn't know God, and didn't have a relationship. So church was mostly like myself and my sister like writing notes on tissue paper to each other
Yeah.
back and forth, trying to, and when you're not supposed to laugh, that's when you want to laugh the hardest
Nice.
and loudest.
Yes. Yes.
And it was many of those moments in church, I must say. So that was my early memories. I was exposed to church with my mom. My mom
Mhm.
made sure that we went to church every Sunday, even though I used every trick in the book not to go. We would go. I had to go to the Sunday school, and Sunday school used to be like on a Sunday afternoon. I had to
Cool.
go to youth on a Friday. It was compulsory. There was no arguing. Like I didn't have to say. Um, but I was not interested in
Mm,
Christianity or anything like that. But I had to go.
yeah. Can you? I mean, I relate in a big way to that, and I'm very grateful for my mom, who kind of took us to church, and I'm sure, or actually, I know seeds were sown in those days. That
Yeah,
the fruit of that is definitely still coming out today. But sometimes, as a kid, you don't the priorities aren't there, or maybe you don't fully understand. Can you
yeah.
remember a moment, Candice, when it became real for you? When maybe it went away from being something that we do or we're dragged to, but geez, this like I believe in Jesus and this thing is
Yeah.
real. Because I think if somebody meets you today, there's definitely it's obvious. There's a passion for Jesus. There's a passion for His house.
Yeah.
Can you remember that moment?
Yo, I remember I was grade 11,
Mm.
17 years old. I cannot say that there was like a moment. I wasn't in church, I wasn't at a youth. It was a weekday, a Wednesday. I was at school. I just remember coming home that day. And that evening, I went to my mom and I said, Mommy, I want to give my life to Jesus. And she was like, she was shocked. Like she was like, "Are you
I thought you
sure?"
did it already.
No, no, no. She knew I was not on the right path because up until that point, like I was a bit of a rebel,
Yeah,
and she knew that. But I could always hear her praying for me in her
yeah,
bedroom. I heard those prayers. At the time, it used to drive me nuts, but it all makes sense now, being a mom. But yeah, so I went to her on a Wednesday night. Like I just told her I want to give my heart to Jesus, and she led me to God right
wow,
there at her
wow.
bedside. And then after that, I was like, okay, so what do I do now? And then our pastor, like at the time, he said, like, just join a ministry, like serve.
Mm,
And I don't know, I can't even remember the exact thing. There was different ministries, like ministries that I needed to choose from, but for some reason that I don't understand, everything was full. Like how that's possible, I don't know. And the only available was the worship team. And then I was
okay,
like, flip, what do I do there? And then I said, okay, let me learn to play the bass guitar. And then I joined the worship team, and
sure.
I I learned to play the bass a little bit, and then like the people left, like the words, like a lot of the singers left, and then they hoed me on that stage. Like I was never like I never sang really, and I was just thrown on. Like they needed people, and I was like, okay.
I'm your
um,
guy.
sorry.
You're like, I'm your guy. I'll do it. I'll sing.
I did not put my hand up. Like honestly, like everybody, like any available volunteer there was thrown on that stage. You had no
Sure.
say.
Well,
True
listen, if
story.
your pastor, when you were looking to serve and all the ministries are full, that church must have been doing something right. Because I've never heard of a ministry that's full. We're always looking for people. Candice,
Okay, okay.
talk to me a bit about. I love that you're chatting about serving and getting involved in a ministry, and obviously, worship is a massive gift on your life, and on Hadley's life as well. Tell me a little bit about the role worship, and maybe you can touch on serving, but even just with a focus on worship, what that has meant to you, as a believer and as a follower of Christ, and in the context of serving, or even just in the context of your walk, and how you view Jesus and God, and your faith. What has worship meant to you? What type of role has that played? Because it's something that we can see the passion for, but I'd love to hear even just one or two thoughts about personally what it's meant for you.
It's been life changing for me. I feel like I've received so much revelation of who
Sure.
God is just through worship, and not just during corporate moments, but worshiping
Mm,
in like in my private moments, like worshiping in my quiet time, just like singing to God. And like I just get like constantly I get this new revelation of who he is. Like, wow, God is so holy. Like there's no
mm,
one like him. And it's through my worship at home. I feel like on a Sunday, it just like that revelation overflows and is heightened when I just
sure.
see God's people also get a revelation of God's holiness and like how big He is. So worship has like it really drew me closer to
Mm,
Jesus. It's not something that I wanted to like being part of a ministry. It can get very task orientated. You need to like sing, you need to practice, you need to do all these things in prep for Sunday. I feel like I always like guard my heart against it becoming just something that I need to do. But
good.
actually, like when we practice the songs, like worship through it in your private time, like pray over
Yeah.
these songs, like worship through these songs. And even if it's old songs, you like ask God for a new revelation, because sometimes so many, like we often, oh my gosh, that song again. Phil, I'm looking
Yeah.
at you now.
Ah, please.
But it's just like when the song is up, you just say, God, like, give me a fresh revelation of who you are through these words,
Good.
through worship. And yeah, so it's been amazing.
I love that thought. And maybe even if we want to elaborate a little bit more on that, you guys also, and your kind of how you serve in the church and how you carry strong in the church is also so admirable as well. What type of role do you think, even just being planted and connected and rooted in church? Because I think even before you guys joined our church, you were very involved in your previous church and
Yeah.
carried weight and served that congregation so well. Where has that kind of conviction come from? Is it like a similar? Is it a similar place? Is it something that's just it's in your heart? Yeah, maybe you could share on that quickly.
Um, I would say it's definitely just in my heart. And
Mm,
like just through thanks, like just having a grateful heart for what God has done for you. It really comes from that place of just like, God, because of all you've done,
yeah.
like I want to just serve. But it's
Mm,
also through reading his word and revelation of his word that like kind of compels your heart to want to
yeah.
serve, like want to pour in. Like I'm reminded of the story. I think her name was Mary that poured out
Yeah.
her most like her most expensive perfume on Jesus' feet, and just that moment, like it just compels you to want to worship,
Yeah.
to want to just lavish all that you have on God, because
Mm,
He's just holy. He's just yeah, like I can't really put it into
yeah.
words.
No, no, I love that. I love that picture and that analogy. It's a response. Hey? It's like a response to a conviction in your heart. And I mean,
Yeah,
I think about like King David in the Psalms, and there's moments where he would make himself look a fool to
yeah,
anybody else because it's just this overflow of joy, being in the presence of God. And I think when you can serve out of that place, geez, what a beautiful representation of God. I'm just so grateful for your love and your mercy and your grace. But it's about walking kind of that line of like, and you mentioned it when you're talking about worship, where it's like just something that I have to do or I need to do, to like, wow, like I get to do this for God. And then there's good things to talk about there as well in terms of staying healthy and having healthy rhythms. But
yeah,
hearing about that, I mean, I love that. And maybe even as we start to wrap up, I think you and Hadley, you guys have had your fair shares of ups and downs and movement in your life, where you've had to navigate and walk through, really good seasons, but also really tough seasons. Would love to hear kind of how your faith helped you in those moments where things were really difficult and hope almost seemed maybe lost at that point. And then even just to finish that, if you had maybe just one little piece of advice that you give to somebody when it comes to their faith and going through tough moments, what you'd encourage them to do, totally based on your story and the lessons that you've learned.
yeah. Like when I was reflecting on this question, there was two specific moments that came to mind. So when Hadley and I were like we were married for about 1 year,
Mm,
we wanted to start like trying for kids, and like like it took a long time, and eventually I found out I was pregnant, and we were so excited, like over the moon. We made like an appointment with the gynae, and like we were just like we were so excited like for like this new journey. And we got to our 8-week appointment scan, and I'm laying on the bed. I'm like super excited to hear the baby's heartbeat, and Hadley's next to me holding my hand, and all of a sudden the gynae says that like unfortunately there's no heartbeat, and this is now an like a non-viable pregnancy. And I remember lying there like thinking, what is she saying? Like, what does that even mean? Like up until this point, I didn't think that miscarriage would be a reality for me.
Yeah.
But it happened to us, and like I had to go into surgery after that. And yeah, after like that moment, I've had, I think, like 2 additional miscarriages, and then I fell pregnant again. And I went for the scan, like expecting the worst. Like I just every time I'm always just like expecting the worst. And there was a heartbeat. And then
Sure.
the next scan came. The heartbeat is still there. And it was 7 months down the line. And I was like, and after like, like not really embracing the pregnancy, I think I only embraced it at 7 months. I was like,
Wow.
flip God, okay, I think this is it now.
I
Like,
can be happy.
like, okay, can I be happy now?
Yeah.
Um, and then it was Noah, and Noah was born. Um, a healthy baby boy, and 3 weeks into like him being born, like after his birth, he got very ill.
Mm.
He started like coughing to the point where his breath would go away. We were in and out of hospital. They couldn't figure out what was going on. They couldn't understand what it is that was wrong. The doctors were concerned. They couldn't pick up. It was like probably 4, 6 weeks in us being at a hospital. Like
Sure.
every night, whenever Noah's breath would go away, the nurses, doctors would come in there, and it would just feel like this is it.
Mm.
And it got to the point where the doctor actually told Hadley, take her out because I was having like multiple panic attacks,
Sure.
just to take me out of the ward. And it was when he took me out, we just went outside, and I was in a panic state. And Hadley and I just started praying, like, God, just have your way in our hearts, like fix our
Mm.
hearts, like I heard this weekend. And we were saying
Mm.
that same prayer, like God, just like fix our hearts, fill us with faith. But also, like if this is your will, um, if you need to take Noah, then like your will be done.
Sure.
And like God really just gave us his peace. As hard, like obviously it's a very hard moment.
Yeah.
um, we in that moment we just had a complete trust in God. And like miraculously they figured out that he had pertussis, and just when they made the diagnosis, it was Noah just like came over the hurdle of it being like the worst. And I know that like pertussis is like a life threatening to an infant.
Yes.
um, and I feel like God was protecting me, like keeping that diagnosis away from me, because like my heart wasn't ready to receive it.
Sure.
And when it
Wow.
was revealed, like he was over the worst, and now everybody sees Noah running around the a building on a Sunday, and he's still with us today. And like if I could just encourage people to just like in difficult moments lean into God. Like
Mm.
when it's good times, when it's bad times, lean into God. Surround yourself with people, like a community that can pray with you and stand with you.
Yeah.
um and yeah, like even during that time, community was so like they like our church and the people in our lives carried us through that
Yeah.
time.
Mm.
And yeah, just like I can just encourage people to like pray and every day, and not take prayer for granted, not
Mm.
taking quiet time for granted, like leaning into God, because his strength, like when you need it most, his words comes, like he's like you reminded of what his word says. Yeah.
Yeah. Jeez. That's powerful, Candice. Thank you so much. We yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to just share with us. And our heart and our hope really is that anybody who's watched this today and has joined us can be encouraged by Candice's story and the things that she's gone through and the ups and downs. And we want to encourage you that, like in all of us, the story is still unfolding. There is still a process. God is still moving and shaping. So you might be watching this now and you might feel like, geez, I'm right in the middle of something quite difficult. I'm right in the middle of something tough. I just love Candice's encouragement today is to just, can we bring God into the middle of the mess? Can we bring God
Yeah.
into the middle of the struggle, the trial, where it feels like all hope is lost? We can't cope. We can't carry the weight anymore. It's really in those moments where the scripture in Matthew that teaches, God's burden is light, his yoke is easy, to bring him into the situation and to let him kind of carry us in the moments where we can't carry ourselves. So Candice, thank you so much, man. I'm going to let you get back to work, but we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining us today. If this video has been helpful to you, please like, and even if you want to leave a comment, you're welcome to do so. And share this with the people in your world we wanted to encourage and inspire. God bless you. We'll see you soon.